Good evening. This is Maestro Cretella with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Tonight I have a 1 versus 1 on Calderis Refinery. On the blue side we have Templar Money Ghost as the Space Marine Apothecary, a healing commander, not a very powerful fighter, but he heals some of the most durable units in the game, in Tier 1 especially, so he's still a very good commander overall in my opinion. On the other side, we have Maestro Cretella as Sindri Trollface Chaos Sorcerer. This commander with a lot of long-range functionality with both teleporting, artillery spells like Doombolt, Warp Fire, a lot of crazy Tier 2 and Tier 3 shenanigans. Also a very good commander in my opinion. So as you'll notice, this is a replay featuring me. Now, in this cast, I actually wanted to kind of talk about some more theoretical stuff, doing maybe a little bit less play-by-play to talk about some more theoretical stuff, as I just said. So one of the interesting things, at least interesting to me, is that in this game, there are two heroes that I kind of know pretty well. The Apothecary is actually my original main. I learned how to play the game with the Apothecary pretty early on in Retribution. I did not play Chaos Rising or Vanilla. And I kind of pretty much mained the Apothecary almost exclusively until he was nerfed in 3.18 when he became rather ineffective because his heal was pretty bad. And that's when I actually switched to the Sorcerer. Now, one of the things I've heard about, one of the early things I learned about back when I was learning how to play is that supposedly this matchup actually favors Space Marine. That's what I was told way back in the day when I was first learning how to play. I didn't really understand it, especially since that was also a time when Chaos was kind of considered the best race in the game for 1v1, while Space Marine was actually considered kind of like low tier, so to speak, as a 1v1 race. So I was kind of confused about how supposedly the best race in the game had a disadvantage against supposedly the worst race in the game. But I've kind of learned a bit more about it over time, especially from playing both races. One of the things that confused me is that Chaos really does seem to have everything they need to counter much of the Space Marine arsenal. That's how I felt about it back then, and I still feel that way about it. But the problem I find, at least in practice, in theory they have everything they need to counter the Space Marine arsenal. In practice, but I find that in practice they can't really afford all of it. Anyway, so I'm not going to go completely no play-by-play, but as you can see, I'm getting my second CSM squad pretty late. That second CSM squad, I kind of delayed on that because I got some power, and I got some power because I actually didn't know whether Templar Money Ghost was going to be Grey Knights or Space Marines. So I've only had 2 units on the field compared to Templar Money Ghost 3. I'm hurting on map control quite a bit. I haven't taken a victory point yet. I mean, I've taken this point right here, but it's still 500 points in Templar Money Ghost's favor. I've gone for this double Chaos Space Marine build, which it's a build that I used a lot. For a long time, I used only that build. These days, I don't use it that much. I've kind of heard that I was kind of told by some people that it's not a very good build, and especially in this matchup, I think it's actually a pretty bad choice, to be honest, even though I bought it, 2 Chaos Space Marines. Mainly, the problem with the Chaos Space Marines is that, as it is, they get countered by the tax in Tier 1. They scale better into Tier 2 and Tier 3, but in Tier 1, they lose to tax. They have less health, and they do less range damage, even without the tax activating Kraken Bolts. And then the tax will activate Kraken Bolts, which turns the battle pretty seriously in their favor. Additionally, right now these tax have the healing aura from the Apothecary, making them tank more damage, and then the Apothecary can also just heal them straight up to prevent them from bleeding, while I potentially take bleed from my Chaos Space Marines. I am getting to Tier 2 before my opponent, but right now his build pretty much counters mine. I was kind of talking about the disadvantages of that build. As it is, my Sorcerer dies. The disadvantages of that build, these double Chaos Space Marines. One of the problems is Chaos Space Marines are durable, and they win against a lot of other Tier 1 range units, Guardsmen, Dire Avengers, Shooter Boys, as long as they're in cover. But their advantage, or at least their strength, is not DPS. They do pretty good DPS. It's something like 40 overall. But overall, their strength is more in their durability. And especially against Space Marine, who are going to tank some of that damage since Tax and ASM have heavy infantry armor. Those Chaos Space Marines are just not really going to make enough of an impact in the engagements, because they're kind of just going to chip away at attack health without really causing many losses or even threatening the attacks that much, especially with an Apothecary ready to heal them. They will... Chaos Space Marines do counter scouts, but right now there are just too many units here. And especially the Assault Space Marines is kind of... The Assault Space Marine squad is kind of the ace in the hole, or ace up the sleeve, or whatever that expression is for the Space Marine, I think, in this matchup, and especially in Tier 1, and especially against this build. It's really going to bleed the Chaos Space Marines pretty quickly, and they do, yeah, at least in Tier 1, they do get hard countered by those Assault Space Marines, especially when they're already struggling to keep up with Tax. And as you can see, I'm not performing well at the moment. I think there were some times when I had some map control, but I lost my Chaos Sorcerer. I had to buy him back. I got the Rod of Warpfire, and I have Mark of Tzeentch on one of my Chaos Space Marines, and I'm getting the Mark of Khorne on one of the others. So that Mark of Khorne, both marks are very good against Space Marines, and that's one of the things that, at least to me, always seemed like an asset that Chaos had against Space Marines. Both of these marks are very good against Space Marines. The Tzeentch mark will counter Tax. It will hard counter scouts, but they will get countered by ASM. The Mark of Khorne will counter ASM, hard counter Tax, but get countered by scouts. And right now, unfortunately, I'm kind of just outnumbered here, even though these units by themselves do so well against Space Marines. But I'm also just losing on map control. I have fewer units. My Tzeentch squad gets jumped, and my Khorne squad runs in there, but they're taking too much damage just from there being too many units here. I kind of have my Sorcerer not fighting because I want him to cap, but that results in my CSM getting forced off. And unfortunately that cap wasn't quite worth it, and especially not with shotguns. Basically the entire Space Marine army here getting a Gen Bash. I decide to run my Heretics over to counter Gen Bash while I try to stall out this Generator Bash as much as I can. And unfortunately I just don't really have enough field presence with my current build. Even though I got that middle victory point, my natural is getting decapped. And I used the Warp Fire on the Rod of Warpfire from the Chaos Sorcerer to stall out that flame attack a little bit, but it still did not save me from losing my entire farm. Chaos Space Marines finally back out on the field. Now these Chaos Space Marines, as you can see, I still only have 3 units. I just don't have enough field presence, as good as these units are. One of the mistakes that I kind of made here was basically over-investing in Chaos Space Marines without getting a new unit in Tier 3, and I don't really just have enough to keep up with map control. And although my units by themselves are better than the Space Marine units, the composition of the Space Marine army is beating them, since just the way it kind of works out, where the ASM can just instantly choose to jump on the Tzeentch Marines, and then if the Khorne Space Marines try to do something, they'll get blasted by shotgun scouts. I am getting a nice counter Gen Bash. I do manage to take out here. I'm taking out a 3rd Generator, so I at least get that counter Gen Bash off. Right now I'm losing quite a bit on the victory points, though. I have the 2 cap, but I haven't taken that many victory points yet. I haven't really had that 2 cap for very long. My opponent is getting a Chaos Dreadnought. I mean, not a Chaos Dreadnought. He's getting a Space Marine Dreadnought. So I do get off. I get almost a full Gen Bash off, but ultimately I decide to run out of this fight. Assault Space Marines backed up by the Apothecary. Apothecary running with no upgrades, believe it or not. So this Rod of Warpfire, Chaos Sorcerer. Warpfire is pretty good. I kind of use that right there to stall those Chaos Space Marines. So Warpfire is kind of like it's a plasma cannon ability, basically. But right now my Chaos Sorcerer is clearly overextended, and that knockback is also hurting him. I've been finding him getting knocked back a lot, and my Chaos Space Marines come in to support, but this Heretic is in trouble. That lone Heretic. Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines do kind of force off those scouts, but I don't think my Heretic is going to get out of there alive. Is he? Alright, he does just barely get out of there alive. That Aspiring Champion. And now we do have the Khorne Space Marines right in here. Khorne Space Marines, they're just they are an extremely good unit. They are very good hero killers, but Templar Money Ghost does retreat in time, does not even take an ASM loss. So my Chaos Space Marines are kind of they both have marks. They also both have Aspiring Champions. I do not have Eternal War on them yet. That is actually something, and I spared since I already kind of over-invested in the Chaos Space Marines, and it's actually not working out well enough for me. I personally often go for the Aspiring Champion instead of Eternal War. That Aspiring Champion does do more to increase the squad's performance. It's a 33% damage increase because it's another model, and it's also a 33% increase in durability, whereas Eternal War is just a 20% damage increase. The risk, although the reason not to get that Aspiring Champion, the Aspiring Champion is more expensive, and you can actually lose him. And then those costs are kind of sunk. We had a special attack there from the Dreadnought. Got some of those Chaos Space Marine models, doing quite a bit of damage. One Chaos Space Marine model dies, and I'm moving my forces in here. I decide to at least attempt to counter that Dreadnought with a Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Dreadnought. So that Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Dreadnought is something I like. And I need some kind of AV to deal with this Dreadnought. And I guess I was kind of worried about Assault Space Marines jumping on a Havoc squad. The Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Dreadnought, as you can see, it's doing a lot of AV damage. This Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Dreadnought, according to the old tooltip, does 46.5 explosive damage, which I'm pretty sure is the highest AV damage you can get on a single unit that is not a las cannon Predator. I'm pretty sure. Fortunately, my Khorne Space Marine in a lot of trouble getting jumped. I kept them in there a little bit too long, and the Space Marine Dreadnought nearly goes down. And I managed to even save my Chaos Space Marines with that suppression. And now Templar Money Ghost is actually going to force melee. He was starting to force melee the Dreadnought with his scouts, which is certainly bad for the scouts. But meleeing a Dreadnought, at least the Chaos Dreadnought, will prevent it from firing. That scout squad gets dangerously low on health, loses 2 models, and nearly died from that Tzeentch fire and the missile fire. Tzeentch fire from both the Chaos Space Marines and the Dreadnought. So, that Tzeentch Dreadnought is actually kind of putting me back in this game. I've kind of been in a bad position. Basically, the Tzeentch Dreadnought, it will certainly beat the Space Marine Dreadnought in ranged, and if the Space Marine Dreadnought tries to approach, it will take a lot of damage because that Tzeentch Dreadnought is doing so much ranged AV. The Space Marine Dreadnought will definitely beat it in melee. It's doing about 100 DPS heavy melee, and it has more health, while the Chaos Dreadnought has only about 73.33 DPS heavy melee, at least according to the old tooltip. Trying to get some Gen Bashes off. Unfortunately, Templar Money Ghost now has both a Melt-A-Bomb and a Missile Attack, so he's invested in AV. Not the heaviest AV overall, but I think it'll be enough to deal with what I've got. I think that was a direct missile hit on the Khorne Space Marines. I kind of try to buy some time with my Tzeentch squad, but ultimately it doesn't quite work out for me. And then one of the things I do here, which is probably ultimately a mistake, is I went to Tier 3. There are a lot of times when I'm kind of watching matches and I'll say like, oh, he shouldn't have gone to Tier 3. And I think it was a bad idea for me to go to Tier 3 here, because I'm kind of losing on things already. I think if I had invested in a Havoc or even a Plague Marine squad, that would kind of have allowed me to deal better with that Dreadnought. Probably one of those units would have been the best choice, since this Dreadnought is very tough. It's giving all of my units a lot of trouble, and then I have to worry a lot about my Chaos Dreadnought. So I feel like basically his Dreadnought is not threatened enough by the rest of my army. It's only threatened by my Dreadnought, and my Dreadnought is threatened too much by the rest of his army. Mainly these missile attacks and the Assault Space Marines. And I'm using that Rod of Warfire to stall out those units, which is, it is working, but unfortunately it's also a sign that I'm kind of on the back foot of things. And here I am, forced off again, my Tzeentch Dreadnought with limited support. Most of these units forced off, and I keep the Chaos Sorcerer in too long. Gets hit by full auto on this fully kitted out Apothecary, and my Chaos Sorcerer goes down again. And kind of a late missile barrage from the Tzeentch Dreadnought to save the Chaos Sorcerer. So now I just went to tier 3. I have no wreck. I just bought Tome of Subjugation on my Chaos Sorcerer. So I just invested in my Chaos Sorcerer, and now he's on the floor, so I can't even use him. And unfortunately, this is a terrible engagement by me. So while I have some time, I guess I should also... Some other things I want to talk about here are just... I'm not really the greatest player. I mean, I've gotten into casting recently. Been getting a lot more community attention from people because I'm casting. Response has been mostly very positive. And some things have even been happening where recently I'll start getting invites from some very good players, including like Texanius and stuff, saying like, hey, we need people for 2v2. Trying to step it up a little bit. I am kind of a mid-level player. I've certainly been playing for a while now. Although I'm probably... I find that certainly really good players are going to kind of kick my ass. A lot of the times I do just join whatever game is up, and usually when I join just whatever game is up, I kind of stomp all over the people who are playing in whatever game is up. But I've kind of been a little afraid to push myself to the higher levels, trying to go after games with some of those better players, but they're starting to come to me. Anyway. Templar money going into tier 3. I'm already there, but unfortunately that's been a bad purchase. His Apothecary is fully kitted out with Master Crafted Bolter, Armor of Purity, and improved medical equipment. This is mostly a heal spam build, since he has a very short cooldown on his heal. And then that Master Crafted Bolter is just such a great hero killer, since it does knockback and damage to a unit. And then if you have like all this ranged force that Templar Money Ghost has, you can usually focus down most heroes, especially heroes that aren't tanky melee heroes. The Master Crafted Bolter is especially good against tanky melee heroes, because it's a way of controlling them, but it's also very good against non-tanky melee heroes, because you can usually kill them. So we have a missile tax squad here. I personally think missile tax are very good. Basically just having this AV that doesn't need to set up on a squad that's very durable, and in this case a squad that's durable and can get healed. I actually think it's very good. There was a time when people say like, oh, missile tax, like, it's overpriced, don't get it. Get a las cannon devastator instead, but a las cannon devastator can be tough to manage, especially if it's getting jumped by something. And assault space marines kind of jump in here, I think, a little prematurely, and ultimately probably going to get forced off. They do use a merciless strike, but they do get forced off right here. So, I do have my Chaos Sorcerer back on the field so that he can subjugate. Subjugate is one of the Sorcerer's major assets, but I'm not in the greatest position to use it, since right now he kind of has a better army than I have. Not kind of, he does have a better army than I have. And this is a case where I'm probably gonna be having trouble keeping my Sorcerer alive during a subjugate, but I kind of instinctively go get it, especially since it's one of the main counters to Terminators. It's actually, the Sorcerer is the best counter to Terminators in the game, which is one of the reasons why I was originally kind of confused about the supposed fact that Space Marine has an advantage over Chaos. Anyway, I actually go for a subjugate on the Tactical Marines. Normally, the subjugate would have been better spent on the Chaos Space Marines, and I'm actually wondering if I really should have used the subjugate on the Chaos Space Marines, because right now I'm losing a lot of units. My Horn Chaos Space Marines just barely get out of there, and this engagement right here, I take out that Space Marine Dreadnought, but it looks like One more missile goes off from the missile attack and does take out my Dreadnought. I throw down an Imperial Abyss, and I take out that missile attack squad. So both of us have kind of been reduced to 3 units. I think that was a major engagement for both of us, both taking a lot of losses. Templar Money Ghost definitely came out on top of it. His hero's still alive, so he doesn't have to worry about that. I lost my hero in the process. Meanwhile, I do have a Chaos Predator out, but Templar Money Ghost had a lot of money left over. He also has a lot of red left over. And I get that Predator out. They're going to stop these scouts from capping. So looking back on that engagement, I subjugated the attacks because I wanted them to do damage. I wanted them to do AV damage to Templar Money Ghost Dreadnought. In hindsight, I think I actually would have been better off subjugating the Assault Space Marines when they had jumped so that I could actually have them jump back on his units. And I could have jumped on his tacks, tied up the tacks, bled them, possibly even forced them off. And then meanwhile, my units, my Khorne Space Marines and then my Tzeentch Space Marines would have been able to get back up and actually continue fighting. As it is, I actually lost my Khorne Space Marines in that engagement. I also lost the Aspiring Champion on my Tzeentch Space Marines. And I have the 2-cap, but I'm kind of behind on things. Templar Money Ghost does have a Predator of his own. I have a Chaos Predator. His has a he's getting a las cannon right here. And unfortunately, this is an engagement that I am going to force off his Assault Space Marines, but unfortunately still not great management by me. I think I'm going to lose my Sorcerer again. So I retreat him out of there. Anyway, now we have dueling Predators. Right now, our Predators are basically even. His has slightly less health, but I don't think that matters that much. And then, unfortunately, Templar Money Ghost is going for a second Predator. And certainly, he's also going for the extra armor, and that essentially tips the battle in favor of his Predator. I do get a las cannon just because, certainly without a las cannon, there's no way I can compete with his Predator. And I decide to have my Predator destroy this generator just so it can do something. And unfortunately, just as I destroy it, I start getting chased down by his Predator. And I try to micro away, but the problem is that his Predator has the same speed. So unfortunately, there was actually nothing I could do there once my Predator started getting hit. And at this point, it's pretty much curtains for me. He's got 2 Predator tanks. I just lost my Predator. So that's mostly the GG for me. And I certainly don't want to just say that this matchup favors Space Marine because I lost this matchup. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that as this matchup was happening. And then we have, so I subjugate those Assault Space Marines, but I'm about to get hit by an orbital bombardment. That is going to be the game, definitely. There's no way I can recover from that. Not with my Chaos Sorcerer trying to hit these guys with magic. So that is pretty much the game. If you would like to comment and tell me more about what I did wrong in this game, feel free to. Certainly, I'm looking to improve as much as anyone else. Maybe not as much. These days, I do get a little busy with casting. I also have a pretty busy schedule, and I don't play one-on-one, 1v1 as much these days, but still go ahead. I certainly, in my opinion, I don't think the double Chaos Space Marine build was a good choice, and certainly not. I especially don't think over-investing them in Tier 2 was a good choice, and I also don't think going Tier 3 was a good choice either, especially since I mainly got the Tome of Subjugation as a preemptive Terminator counter. You can still make a lot of use out of it, even when you're not subjugating Terminators. Your next choice would actually be to subjugate the Assault Space Marines and have them, basically, once they jump on your units, you subjugate them and then have them jump back on your opponent's units. But yeah, I played 3 games with this guy, Templar Money Ghost. He doesn't like me calling him that. It's really just supposed to be Templar's Ghost, but I'm going to call him Templar Money Ghost because I think it'll be better for his sex life. The girls like money. But anyway, I played 3 games with this guy. I'm going to upload the second one as well. The third one we just kind of played off-race, and it was kind of a stupid game. Both of us played off-race, so I'm not going to upload that one. But I hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.